maybe.
What other mic?
Did you want some water too?
Should I go for my mother?
I'll get it.
I'm just going to introduce her.
Ja. Måste klippa på den någonstans. Så.
Okay, it's going to be a little bit of teamwork here. My mother is very good at English, but especially written English. She's a master translator of English to Swedish. She says speaking is another matter. As you know, if you've studied another language. You probably can tell she's my mom. So since everyone is wondering, I'm going to introduce this dress first. And this was handmade by my mother at 16 years old. Every stitch hand sewn, no sewing machine. And it's the folk dress from her birthplace in Sweden, where just like Rosemary said, here in Germany you have different dresses for each province. So she wore this many times, and they celebrate midsummer, big time, middle of summer. That would be one occasion. Last time she fit into it, she tells me, was at my wedding to Pastor Below. And I won't tell you the year. Okay. So a year ago, New Year, she brought it in her luggage and said, "Here, I'm giving it to you." And this is the first time I'm wearing it today. My mother is a mother of 8. Pause for applause. All right, still sane, and she's a caretaker of my father. And still sane. And she, like I said, she's good at translating, and she's in effect the senior editor of the equivalent in Sweden for the Swedish Church of the Sentinel and Forward in Christ. Here, beautiful. I brought a bunch of them. So she paid close attention this morning, I know, because she's always looking for another mission story or just a good article to translate, and she scours the internet. And there's stories in here from Latvia. We heard about Latvia. Stories from all the world mission fields, stories from the United States. She translates all the good writers from the ELS. Besides that, she was instrumental in the founding of the Swedish ladies team, Damlaget. So she'll tell you about the beginnings of Damlaget. This was originally a working name that, they thought CrossStitch was a pretty good name. And then she always asks me, what's the other one? The MLWS. No, Mother, it's LWMS. So Damlaget it is, and she'll tell the story of how Damlaget came to be. And let me just tell you before I hand this over to her that this group of ladies in Sweden have been amazing. So, sorry, I didn't plan on that. But wow, if you think a few ladies can't accomplish anything in the world and for God's kingdom, wow, they have done so much. No pockets. I have no pockets on here.
Sir, I have this one.
What about this? Okay.
I can hold it.
Okay, you hold that.
Well, the thought started when I was in the United States and visited that you told me, Lutheran Women's Mission Society. Yeah.
Yes.
So I started thinking, could we do something similar? And then we have a group, Finnish-speaking people. We have a Finnish-speaking church in Finland, and they only speak Finnish, or some can Swedish also, or English. But I was very impressed. We visited several times their summer. It's a kind of summer camp.
I'm just gonna clip this on here.
Uh-huh. I do like this.
You want to see if that's good?
And they had one afternoon, all the women in the group gathered around a big table. We had Bible study, and we were talking about actual things and had a nice time together. And at the same time, the men had their meeting. I don't know what they did. And they live so spread out there in Finland, so they tried to keep contact at that time. That was before internet was very common. So they had a little book, a little notebook, and they wrote in it things, 1 or 2 pages, about what they were thinking about or what they were doing and so. And then they posted it and sent it to the next. And she wrote something and sent it to the next. And next summer, they had it there and could read what everybody had written. So I went home to Sweden thinking, I have to figure something out for Sweden. And wrote a page in this. Do you have it? Yeah. And I picked out the women in the Bible. In the Old Testament, you have lots of women that, what do you say, were
Or instrumental.
yeah, and also women that went with Jesus. You have Maria, Susanna, and you have lots of examples in the epistles too. So I wrote about that a little and then asked, what can we do? And about a month after that article came, we had our summer meeting in Sweden when lots of people come. We are also very spread out over the country, but that is a special meeting point. So I suggested that the women would gather. So we did. About 20 some women met and we talked about it and decided to form a ladies team. And we asked ourselves, how do we keep up with it? We live so far away from each other. We see once a year. So we decided to start a mail group. So we have a mail group where we write, I think we have more, between 40 and 50 addresses now. And we chose a board, or to say so?
A board.
Board of 4 of us. And we are still the same 4 after 10, after 10, little more than 10 years. And we have Skype. We Skype 4 times a year to discuss things, when we decide things to do when we want to gather money for some special reason or so. And then we write to all the others we have met, and we decided this and this. So we keep contact all the time.
I have
And, yeah.
Do you want me to read the mission statement?
I want you to read it.
I'll talk like this. This is.
Oh,
How did you get there intentionally?
Doesn't like the dress. This mission statement of sorts was adopted in 2013, a year after they first discussed organizing. As sisters in Christ and members of the Lutheran Confessional Church, we want to serve our Lord by supporting the Church's mission work at home and abroad. We believe that Jesus speaks to us when he says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and of teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Matthew 28. With God's help, we want to support our church's important mission by gladly giving of the time, ability, and means that the Lord has given us.
yeah, we have a home page also under our. We have a home page for our church, and there we have an avdelning.
A tab,
Yeah.
no, a page for
A
the
page
internet.
for the ladies group,
Okay.
where we write about what we do and sometimes put in pictures. So maybe I can put in a picture from here. By en hälsning från Damlaget.
Okay, it's coming.
Nästa, ja.
It's not forwarding.
We need the men too.
There are women that can do this too, but not me. Okay, so. Well, I'll say so. So their last meeting was February 1st. So right before they got on a plane to come here, and that was a phone meeting.
Yeah.
And at that meeting, they were all made aware that my parents were going to be here today, and have said prayers for you all. Yeah. There we go. Greetings.
Yeah. Now we could take the map.
Okay.
If you know,
So this is the greetings picture.
Yeah. It's some of us only. Yeah. this is a map to show how far it is. For example, here is Sweden, Stockholm. We have members up here, and it's about how many miles?
Takes about 11 hours of driving.
11, yeah.
600 miles from Stockholm to some of our members up there.
And the ladies in Finland live around here. And then we take a ferry boat from Stockholm to here or here. And that takes
12 hours.
12, yeah. And we can take the cars on the ferry. So that's the Finnish-speaking part. Then we have a new Swedish speaking. Some people in Finland speak Swedish, especially in this area. And there they have formed a new church, Swedish speaking. And we are in fellowship with both. And we have Damlaget has a couple of members here. And we have also in Norway here some ladies that we share. Yeah. We live here, quite near Stockholm, Seth and me. Our biggest congregation is around here. This part of Sweden is called the Bible Belt. So there are many Christians there. What was it? Something more I should say about that?
Oh,
I must.
well, where they usually meet, that largest congregation about there,
Yeah.
this distance from their home down here for a meeting is about a 5-hour drive. And if you live in Sweden, a 5-hour drive takes about 7 hours because you got to stop for lunch and you got to stop for coffee.
I thought you were going to say moose.
That too.
Yeah, and we have better ways now, but it's not like this, and it's not here either. Yeah, we have that meeting we usually have here, and sometimes we have had it here at the sea, because it's the most people go this short way, then they think it's far to go up here. But we have some that come from far north also. It's been a habit to have ladies' team meeting here every autumn at All Saints, that
All Saints weekend,
weekend.
November.
That place she's pointing at toward the south there is where the biggest congregation of the Lutheran Confessional Church is, and they have a really nice building. So that's why people meet there.
In a former fire station, a remodeled fire station. Yeah, just like all the garages here.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an example how it can look. We have, vad kallar man det när man har, det som man ska ha senare här?
Oh, business meeting.
Business meeting. Yeah. Yeah, there we had rented a scout house. We stayed there overnight. And so we could be together for 2 days. Here is a group of gypsies. They have a church in Bulgaria, in northern Bulgaria, that exists only of gypsies.
Gypsies?
And they are almost the first thing we supported. I forgot to tell about that. That we at the first meeting there, 2012, we gathered money and sent them to Ukraine, because we had heard about from a pastor there about a member who needed badly an eye operation, and they couldn't afford it. No one could afford that, so we helped her with that. So we saved her sight by that. But the next gathering we had was to this group. They have a church there, and what should I say here?
Well,
Yeah.
maybe I can add in John Vogt, some of you know him. He was kind of a mission counselor there and helping that gypsy group in Bulgaria. And John Vogt had also done a little work in Sweden, so that was the connecting point.
Yeah.
And he told them in Sweden about this group, this gypsy Lutheran church in Romania. So that's when the lady stepped in to help.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, and we have supported them during the years. We have also, some of us have visited this church also and brought gifts to them. And we have supported them with Bible money for Vacation Bible School, almost every year, and
Bibles.
We send them Bibles to buy, money to buy Bibles for all that came to the Bible studies. This is the summer school. Yeah, you can take next. Yeah. They are very poor, so we decided to gather clothes and shoes for them and sent it by a truck down there. Do I do something?
Put your hand on the microphone.
Oh.
You were all paying attention, really. Do that again.
This was the first time, but during COVID, it was very bad down there, and it was a cold winter. So we decided to send winter clothes and shoes, warm shoes there. So we sent even more. It was 2020, I think, in the autumn. So,
The van. Van.
yeah, we bought a van for them. Oh, not all the van, but part of it. So the pastor could go and visit members that live further away. So,
2 students.
yeah, they had two, yeah. At least one, yeah.
She told me
see-
2 pastoral students. They've been helping
helping with
so they
money.
can study for the ministry.
Was it something more?
I think you got most of it. Oh, meal for money for a Christmas meal, a Christmas celebration.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this is ongoing. They've kind of adopted this group. And I think you were going to mention later on. Are you familiar with the brochure, The Promise? It's in many different languages. They sponsored it being translated into the Gypsy Romanian language because in Sweden there are a lot of seasonal gypsy beggars, and they'll sit outside the grocery stores and downtown, and a lot of our members run into them continually. So that's one way they have reached gypsies right in Sweden.
And they seem to be very happy to get that.
Okay. It's stuck.
Try to do it on computer.
We need Pastor Hein.
While he's fixing that, how do the gypsies get over to Sweden in that time? Do they come across by ferries or?
Maybe via Denmark, which is just one ferry then from Denmark to Sweden, or a bridge.
So there's a like a causeway to get over there.
Yeah, amazingly, and so they beg for a few months, and whatever they can get together, they then travel home.
They're not allowed to stay more than for 3 months.
3 months.
But after 1 month, they come back. They go home for a month, and then they come back for 3 months again. Where we live, it's been the same for many years.
So they come across, from, like you said, from Denmark. They come all the way up to where you're at, Stockholm.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And the trouble now is, if I just find this really interesting, you like to help with, a few dollars or the equivalent, but Sweden has gone more or less cashless.
Yeah.
It's all card. So how do you help?
What's the answer?
They have got Swish.
The gypsies have Swish?
Some. But
So you send it from telephone to telephone that way, in other words.
Or you have to go to
I haven't tried it. You have,
press the card and get cash. You can give.
yeah, but they take away those machines also. There are not many left where you can get money. So this was only to show how nice we have it on the summer camp.
Oh, it's under there. So this is the youngest one of the 8
Yeah,
and the tallest.
basket player.
Okay, let's see
Okay.
if this works now.
Yeah, this is a page from that paper. It tells about the mission project. Here, this lady, she has meant a lot to our group. She's in the board also, and she has lots of ideas. One is that we do like this when we serve coffee or something for free. People can put money here for the ladies' team. So it's one way to gather money for what you want to do. So people in our church knows what it means when we put this on the table. Yeah, she is so full of ideas. Just the kind of people you need. Ska vi ta kanotlägret?
Yeah.
Ja.
Får öka farten lite.
Ja. We support children's camps and youth camps. This is the advertisement for a youth camp, an example of what they do. Vi får öka. Once we had a visit by Professor Brooks' wife. She came with him when he had a speech at this conference, and she came to us in the ladies' team and told about Malawi. She was engaged in a mission project there. And then we gathered money sent to Malawi. I write about that. Yeah.
Okay, the next picture of the pastors in Sweden is a segue to food. Oh, okay, to this pastor. So they have a lot of visits from the Wells and the ELS, right, at the conventions. See, he's holding that little logo. And then the ladies take care of the visitors, do all the meals.
That's the fire station there.
Yeah, that's in the fire station. And you have the church here. And this is, vad säger man, samlingsrum. Here you can eat and have gatherings of other kind. And this is Mrs. Jennifer Wolfgram. She and her husband had been in Siberia for, I think, 24 or 25 years. But they had to leave now when the war broke out. And they live right now in Albania. And she came to tell about the mission work in Siberia. Yeah.
Yep.
This is an example of what we are doing. We cook at big meetings and serve food. This is smörgåstårta. You
Can I
have
say
to
one
tell.
word about this picture? I try to talk the ladies here into doing that. So it's this fancy sandwich cake, and they're so good, but a lot of work. Yeah, we went with the meatballs.
That was delicious.
Excellent choice.
Okay. And then, they advertise the canoe camp for the youth, and then they follow up in the next issue. One of the participants writes an article, and they publish that.
This is an example of a children's camp in the winter. And they learned about Daniel in the lion's den. And they made a play over that. He's praying that. Yeah, and yeah.
I think they're making lion faces.
Yeah. And we also sometimes call a pastor to come and talk about some topic. And here is a pastor who told us about diaconia.
Being a deaconess.
Yeah.
I heard him.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is an example from when we meet.
Yeah,
We bring things to eat and
at 3 in the afternoon, and it's pitch black, dark.
yeah.
This is not Sweden.
Yeah, we went to Albania. They had a CELC meeting there, CELC Europe meeting, and we were there. 4 of us, I think, 3 of us.
Should maybe
Albania.
explain what CELC is. It's the
CELC.
CELC.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to have that big convention in Seoul in June. That's the international one. But CELC Europe has its own smaller meeting, and they met in Albania. So some of the ladies went to that meeting.
Yeah. That's from the same occasion. Yeah. Here is the wife of their chairman. What do you say? Chairman. He died suddenly last autumn, or maybe it's. Yeah. But he died very suddenly.
Yeah, it was a pastor that years ago Wells sent a missionary to Albania.
Yeah.
And then there was some unrest, and he had to leave. And this older man became a pastor in Albania and kept getting more and more training. And he was really central to that church there, but he managed to train up a successor. And he was loved by everybody in the CELC, and then he died pretty suddenly. And that's his widow.
Yeah. That's all from the same occasion, so you can just. That's also no. This is last year. Those two went down there and brought gifts to the congregation there in Durrës, Albania. There was another CELC meeting. That's also from there. This is how it can look when we have a potluck with the ladies' team. Nice. Yeah. And, förlåt. You need to rest sometimes after all the work. That's nice also. Yeah. This was in connection with a CELC meeting in Sweden. So we ladies that were there, we went on a...
Is that Marilyn Monroe in that picture?
Yes, she's part of
She's
the
a member of the
Yes.
ladies' team.
Vad gjorde jag?
Still paying attention.
Well, we made an excursion that afternoon. We went to, it was in Småland, and we went to a glasbruk.
Glass factory, or
Yeah.
where they make the famous Swedish crystal.
Handmade. And then we went to this cafe with Marilyn Monroe. This is another excursion we made in connection with that summer camp it's by a lake, and this was on an isle where they had a restaurant. This is another meeting. Yeah. Shouldn't say. Yeah, and a nice, we make, look we make excursions sometimes. We try to do it once a year, but not many can come. Only those who are old enough not to need to work anymore. So it started at this place, and then we went to a little town at the west coast and had very nice days there, as you can see. That's only examples of what we do. Yeah, it's from the same excursion.
A lot of pictures with food.
We eat a lot, yeah. It's the last. Jag har inte berättat om hur vi samlar, hur vi använder den där mailgruppen. I forgot to tell about. You get shorter time. If you are interested to hear that. When we hear about something, for example, it was a big earthquake in Nepal where wells have mission, and lots of other things. Widows in India, and I don't know, lots of examples. We write something. We find out what it is about and write about it on to this mail group and ask them, if you want to support this, please send money within 2 weeks or so, and write the purpose, so we know. And we have gathered very much money because people have money that they don't need, and they want to help. They are happy to help, and we always do it knowing that they get the word of God also, the gospel. Ja, ska vi stoppa där? De vill att vi ska sluta nu. Ja.
He wants his share of the time.
I lost it.
Jag kan inte röra. Så fort jag rör mig så blir det. Sorry.
Any questions for her?
This is another thing we do to get money, and we make, there's one who's good making cards that we sell. We can send them around if you want to.
That we can
No, yeah, we have. It's in Swedish.
I
Of
would
course.
write it on there, but
Yeah.
that whiteboard does not erase anymore.
Is it in the book? Here, he can write it for me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, there is a lot to tell. I recently read what the figure was over the last several years, well, since 2012.
Du
when
får
they got started.
ja, du
The
får
money
dra
they
över tiden
collected
också.
to help around the world, it was greater than what the church collected for missions,
Wow.
just from the ladies.
Ja.
Any,
Den mikrofonen också.
Aha, hör de ihop?
Ska jag ha det? Yeah, that's for the recording.
den.
No, clip it on the other side. And
The
then I'll
best to
adjust the
put the-
volume.
Då får man fast den där. Så. Ja, ska jag ha den? I happens to be the husband of Birgitta. Well, I think I will explain a little bit about the situation in Sweden now. Sweden was once a real Christian Lutheran country. Today it is one of the most secular, de-Christianized, can you say that? De-Christianized country. And I think that it is especially difficult to do mission work when the people are de-Christianized. You know, in the Bible it said then you have been a Christian and the evil spirit of you have left you. And it goes away and gather 7 more and go coming, if they let them back, then it will be even worse. But I will try to explain how it happened. First, maybe you have to know why we are rather close to Finland, Norway, and Denmark. It's because of the political situation at the end of the around 1390 or 1400, we came into a union with Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. And the king governing this was in Copenhagen, in Denmark. But that union, they didn't like so much in Sweden in the beginning of the 1500s. So they had a stand-in for the king in Sweden, and the stand-in wanted to take over and be free from Denmark. So in the beginning of the 1500s, they started more or less a revolt against the King of Denmark. The King of Denmark came up to Stockholm to point out that he is the real king for both Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And then they had a special ceremony for him in 1520. And after the ceremony, it was in November, couple of days, they gather in the castle of Sweden to celebrate that now it's order, once more in order. But then they were gathered, lots of bishops, you know, in the Catholic had done before that mission work, and we got Christianity in the Roman Catholic form with a lot of work righteousness and a lot of human statutes which you had to follow, and it was very little of the pure gospel, very, very little. Then they were gathered, church and state together, and 100 persons were gathered there. Then the king, the Danish king, Christian II, he said, now we kill them, because they wanted to oppose me. And that was the bloodshed of Stockholm in November 1520. And after that, then we got a man called Gustav Vasa who took over and broke completely with Denmark, Norway. And since then we were alone. And later on we were in union with Norway, 1814 to 1905. I like years, you know. There was a teacher, the disciples, the students said, oh, we don't like years. Oh, years is fantastic. Not only the year, but also if the month and the day, and if it's the morning or in the evening. That's fantastic to know. Well, Finland was part of Sweden from 1200, because we had missionaries going to Finland, and that became a district, more or less, of Sweden, up till 1809. Then the Russian took it. Then the Russian Tsar came and took it, and it belonged to Russia up till the First World War. Then they could be free from Russia 1917, the 6th of December in the morning. So then Finland was part of Sweden so long, about maybe 30% of the people spoke Swedish in Finland. The rest spoke Finnish, and we don't understand anything of Finnish. It's quite another language. But today, the Finns are taking over so much, so today it's only 6% of the population in Finland who can speak Swedish. So we have problems with the contacts, but especially at the coast, here we have quite many Swedish-speaking people, and we are in close contact with them today. That's a little about the geography. Now, how became Sweden a good Christian Lutheran country? It became Christian in one sense earlier, but that was in the Catholic form, with a lot of human statues and work righteousness, and you know all this. Yeah, how it happened? Because here down in Wittenberg, a miracle happened. It was terrible down there also because of the Catholic distortion of Christianity. And in that situation, it was a miracle that a monk called Martin Luther could understand what it is all about with the Bible. It took him a long time. He tried to make himself perfect in front of God, but he couldn't make it. But at last, he found out what the gospel is about, and the grace of God, and that Christ completely has fulfilled all the demands of God, and he is our righteousness. And we get it not because we are so clever, but purely by the grace of God. And it was a miracle that he could found it. And more than that he had the Kaiser, what you say in English, der Kaiser, the world power against him, and also the Pope against him, the two main powers of the world, and that he could stand it, and that he wasn't killed, and that he could keep his faith. That was a miracle. And that shows that it is only the pure word of God who can keep us steadfast and keep our faith. And therefore it is such a disaster. Then you cannot believe the Bible any longer. Then you learn that the Bible is full of myths and legends and not the truth. So that miracle happened down here in Wittenberg. 2 young men from Sweden went down to Wittenberg 1518. That's the year after Luther had put up the 95 Theses. Yeah. Then 2 men went down to study in Wittenberg 1518, and they stayed there till 1520. And then the one was Olaus Petri, and his brother Laurentius Petri. That's Latin name for them. Olof Pettersson på svenska of Swedish, and Lars Pettersson, the Swedish name, Laurentius Petri. Then they came back. Then they had this terrible, as I said before, the bloodshed in Stockholm had happened. And Gustav Vasa wanted them to in order to be the king of Sweden, he had broken with the Pope and broken with Denmark, and so he needed Luther's teaching. And he called these two men, then they came back and heard about the Reformation and what Luther had taught, and they thought this is something good. Now, because of political reason, then we got the Reformation into Sweden, because Olaus Petri, he became the king's secretary, and also he was allowed to write books and to give lectures and to preach, and also his brother Laurentius Petri did the same. So they produced a lot of good Lutheran Christian literature. And what's very important, Laurentius Petri became then the first Lutheran Archbishop of Sweden. And he sat there up till he died 1573. I don't remember the month. So they had a meeting at the end of the 1500 and decided it's important to keep the Lutheran confession. And during 1600, and especially at the end of 1600, it was a fantastic time in Sweden. We got a lot of good things, lots of good study books, lot of good Bible commentaries, and because the king and the church were close together, it was the government who decided what kind of Christianity we will have in the country. So they decided a special church law, which was a fantastic law, 1686. They got a catechism, the best ever, at the end, 1695. And we got a new hymnal, the best ever. We are trying to do a new hymnal now, but that was the best ever up till now. And so it was a fantastic time. And I give you this background because how sad it is that today we are so de-Christianized in Sweden and so secular. But it was a fantastic, glorious time at the end of 1600. But what happened the next century? You know, we got the so-called Enlightenment. Can you use that word? The Enlightenment? Enlightenment. But it is just the opposite, the darkening time, spiritual darkness, because to talk about God and to talk about miracle, to talk about the gospel, to talk about Christ as both God and man, and that Christ has risen from death, and that he has satisfied everything good for us. So we are redeemed with God. That's stupidity, they said. It was at the end of the 1700, you know, the revolution in France came, and the so-called neology, the new teaching, there you have no place for miracles, no place for God. And so this teaching came into our universities, and all our pastors had to study at the university. They had no special pastoral training, but they had their pastoral training in the universities, and the universities' professors, and some of them started to accept this thinking they got. So during 1800 we got a lot of new books saying that Moses did not exist. The book of Moses that is created by a lot of legends and myths, and Isaiah, that's not real prophecies. It is a conglomerate, a mixture of ideas from different times and so on. Then I started to read theology. This is what they taught me also. Then I started in 1961 at the University of Uppsala. But this teaching came into the church at the end of 1800. And then they stopped in the beginning of 1900. They didn't allow the catechism to be read any longer in schools, and the pastors then were affected by this new teaching. Of course, not all pastors accepted this, and you had a lot of laymen who tried to keep to the Bible and to survive, but they were not in the leadership of the church. So what we had to do at that time was then we tried to survive and to gather a little as a complement to the ordinary congregation. But we got no real church fellowship at that time. We were gathered in smaller groups, and then they had to go to have communion. And to a state church, we had to try to find that pastor is not too bad, or he is rather good. But of course, that was an awkward situation. We were not allowed to leave the Lutheran state church. If you are a Lutheran, you have to be in the state church. If you were Jewish, or if you accepted the new teaching, Baptistic teaching or Methodistic teaching, we could, at the end of 1800, leave the state church. But if you were a Lutheran, you could not. When in 1951 then decided that, okay, you are allowed to leave. So from the 1st January of 1952, we were allowed to step out of the church. But we had so long tried to be a kind of pious complement, so we lost the real good idea of what is meant in the Bible with real church fellowship. So it took a time before we dared to use that new idea to leave. And if you left the state church, it was more or less in the mind, then you leave Sweden. Then you are not part of the nation. It is illegal. So it was hard to convince people that we ought to have a free church. But during 1960, some voices came up saying, we cannot continue like this. We have to form a free Lutheran Confessional Church, but how? And then maybe could show one man who yeah, this is coming, we can go, okay, we can go, this man, Sigbert W. Becker, doctor in theology, professor in Mequon Lutheran Seminary. We got in contact with him, and he came to Sweden. Then we had really formed this institution. We said, how can we continue as Christians and reach out with Christianity if people say, what are you talking about? The Bible, that's just legend, that's just myth. We have to go deep into the Bible and present the biblical doctrine clear. So at the end of 1968, we formed this Institute Biblicum. And we got a magazine with the same name because one of the founders had on his own fighted for biblical faith and had a magazine of his own called For Biblical Faith. And that magazine he donated to this new institution, Biblicum, and we renamed then the magazine to Biblicum, Magazine for Biblical Faith and Research. And that the name of it, as you can see underlined over there. So, and this institution then got in touch with Sigbert Becker, and he came over for a whole month and had teaching about biblical doctrine, about biblical books, about the book of Revelation, and also about justification, of course, because we had quite many pietists in Sweden who thought that this is fine with Christ, but it's something you have to do also for salvation, as a complement. You could not just have the salvation completely as a gift, but you had to earn that gift with some own work. So he showed us clearly how wrong that teaching is, and lifted up the good biblical teaching about the pure gospel. And then he brought up the question of church fellowship. Then we understood that we cannot stay in the state church. And then you have a bill of Per Jonsson, I think. This man, he was pastor in the state church, but at the same time he published articles and a book, and the book called Brothers, What Shall We Do? And he gave the answer, we need a free Lutheran Confessional Church. But it's almost illegal to say that. And he was criticized. Some said that, okay, you can say it, but don't take the step. Then you do that, then you are pariah. We will not touch you anymore. And he took his time before he left himself. My wife left before me because it was so dangerous for me to leave, because I was the leader of Biblicum. And it was good in order to talk with people, come out with them. Of course, if you are pariah, then of course they will not listen to you. So I had to fight with that thinking, what shall I do? But at last I said, I still see what happens, I have to leave, and it happened 1973. I wrote a book about church fellowship, and it was spread around in Sweden, and so it started. At that time I had birds in order to look a bit older than I was. So, yes, but then we went published a lot of books, commentaries, teaching, articles, because it's only the Word of God and the pure gospel who can create faith. So we instead of this critical, liberal, theological books, we needed good, solid, Orthodox Lutheran teaching. But we had many meetings. We traveled to Norway. Professor Becker came every year to help us from 1972 up till his death, 1984. And we worked together, and you can listen on internet on the lectures, because he is speaking English, one sentence, and I translate it. So you get Swedish at the same time, but it's like this. So that might be interesting. It's fantastic lectures he's giving. Listen especially about the free Christian freedom, or about conversion, or about the biblical doctrine, or any. You find a long list if you go to biblicum.se. Biblicum.se. And then go to teaching, undervisning, and then you go down and you see a long, long list of what is Christianity? What does the Bible say? That was typical. But then they went, listened to us, and then went back home again. They had no real good church to be in. So after a while they said, no, we cannot have it like this. You have to live in a good brotherhood, or a good fellowship also between our lectures, which we traveled around to give. So therefore we formed a Free Lutheran Confessional Church 1964. So next year, 1974. So next year we will have the 50th year celebration of our Confessional Lutheran Church. And this is how we gathered. This one of the older men, he's signing the charter for the new church. So you see only his hands there writing his name, and here is our confession. So that's now you have the background, and now we just have to work with the gospel and with what we are doing at Biblicum. We are presenting the biblical doctrine. Here you see the first pastors. These two are brothers, both are not living any longer, he was a young student who became our first pastor up in Uppsala. Yeah, I don't think, yes.
And my grandfather.
Yeah, that was my father. And that's the man with the bird. Yes. Yeah. Here you have then 73. I traveled over to Mequon. This is the president, Oscar.
75.
Is it 75?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Oscar Naumann, at that time the president of Wales. Then he got the shaking hands for as a token of church fellowship. Yeah. Here we had a jubilee.
40th anniversary.
Yeah. And here we are not alone any longer. We have some guests here. This is the pastor in Portugal, Arthur Villares. He is from Finland, Vasa. Ola Österbacka. Behind him was the pastor over there, Jukka Söderström. And here is Vote, you mentioned before. This is also Vitala in the Finnish church, speaking Finnish from Finland, also visited us. I think that might be John Brooke, I think. So we have some guests at this jubilee. Well, now you are tired. Now I am very bad in hearing, but I try to hear if you have some questions. I try to answer. And if I cannot answer, I say, I cannot hear what you're saying.
So is there any more state then in Sweden? Anything state, like the country demands, do they do that anymore?
Do you mean that the state are deciding? No, I think now they say that now we have to separate state and church, and so they did in
January 1, 2000
yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. But what really happened is that the political parties are making lists for who to vote for to govern the church. So after that separation between state and church, it became even more political controlled than before, because then you have to choose social democrats or communists or what you have on different lists for running the church. So the church, they are run by rather secular people. Maybe they are interested in something, but no. And the state church today just about the same ideas as you have it in California or in New York, that if you will not marry same-sex couples, you cannot be pastor. You are banned. If you do not accept or LGBTQE people or trans people or all kinds of, then you are not allowed to be a pastor. So it is a rather, still, some conservatives still are inside the state church, because it's, as I said before, such a big step to leave, they call the sick mother. You shall not leave the sick mother, and the state church is your mother, they say. But according to St. Paul, it isn't like that. Our mother is the true church.
So the Lutheran religion then in Sweden is free
Yeah,
to do what they want, to gather more people and
yeah.
not have to deal with the government.
Yeah, if you're not free to do anything if you are still in the state church.
Right.
Then they are rather strict what you're allowed to do. But if you step out, you are free. But they are finding out that, for example, if I'm saying that according to the Bible, you have only two sexes. God created man and woman. And also the idea sexuality is a fantastic gift of God, but a gift which easily will be misused because of our sinfulness. So if you say that it is sinfulness then with all kinds of homosexuality and so, then you can be fined. Then you can be attacked. So they are saying that you have freedom of speech, you are allowed to do anything, but that's in theory. So if you attack that, is called the common value now of today. I think it's about the same now in Germany coming.
Coming here too.
Over here too, yeah. So, yeah. Any other question?
Besides the state church and the Lutheran church, is there another
Free churches.
Yeah. What's the second largest denomination outside of Lutheran?
Today, because of we have so much of immigration in Sweden, so Muslims, that's not the church really, but it's the biggest group now, more or less taking over many things. And then also Roman Catholics have been, because of we got a lot of immigration from Catholic countries. And the Pentecostals are rather big in Sweden also. And then also a lot of different Baptistic groups have gone together in a church called Ecumenia Church. And Ecumenia, that they point out that still we are, even if we have different doctrines, different views of that and that, we still ought to be together. And that's also a big church. That church was called earlier Swedish Mission Covenant. I think you have something of that over here too. So
Universalist churches.
yeah. But
do you have a seminary where you train your
Biblicum has helped out more or less as a seminary also. Yeah. But that's a problem also to try to find more pastors and more training. So.
Right now, you heard about Pastor Wolfgram from Siberia. He's currently living working together, Biblica and the German seminary in Leipzig.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening.